What's going on, guys? Commander, and welcome to a new video on PC Building Simulator. Now, what we're going to be doing today is looking at a new graphics card that has been added. Now, there have been no new updates to PC Building Simulator since the update that we covered a couple episodes ago. It might have been last video, I can't quite remember. But it's the same update, but when I went through them, I basically was going through the different cases and also just faffing about with these the main new stuff that we've got, like the new cases and the new like CPUs and whatnot. But what I didn't realise is that they added in a new graphics card, and the new graphics card they've added in is the AMD Radeon RX 5700XT, which is the brand new Radeon card that is meant to triumph or come, like, be on the same wavelength as the RTX series from NVIDIA. So, if I just go into this specs a minute, if I go into my graphics card settings, my mouse is playing up a bit. So, Radeon RT or XT. So, AMD Radeon 5700XT. 8 gigs of video memory, core frequency 19,005 megahertz, and the memory frequency is 17,050 megahertz. Now, what's interesting about this is the memory frequency is exactly the same, right? But the core frequency absolutely blasts the 2080 Ti out of the park. Like, if we go to not just the 2080 standard, which is what we're going to be comparing this against today, we might try the 2080 Ti and see how that goes. But if I go to the 2080, the one that we're using is the AOS RTX Extreme Edition. Now, the core frequency, although it's not majorly more, it's still more. So I'm wondering if that's going to have much of an impact. Now, the only difference with this card is I am using, if we go into this PC build here, we are only using one GPU only because, oh, hang on, so that's a 2080 Ti. Never mind. But we are going to be using just one GPU because the new GPU that they've added doesn't actually come equipped with Crossfire, which is AMD's SLI. But, so, we'll only be testing it against one card. I don't know why Radeon have got such a thing against Crossfire, or SLI as it's known in the NVIDIA world. But anyway, so, what we're going to be doing, we'll benchmark this. Now, what I do want to do, just make sure, is that it's on base clock. So, 1950, 1750, that's fine. So, what I'm going to do, now, this isn't liquid cooled in any which way, at all. The only thing that's liquid cooled is the CPU, which isn't really enough. But basically, to go through the specs, what we've got the Core Obsidian case, we've got an Asus ROG Extreme motherboard, we've got the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX, which I'm pretty sure is the 32 core CPU that we were testing beforehand when we were trying to get that high benchmark. And as well as, I think, 128 gigs of RAM, maybe, I think, if I'm right in saying, the RX 5700, and then just a load of storage drives. In this one, we've got, over to the top, again, same case, Asus ROG Rampage Apex motherboard, an i9 9980XE, which is, again, I think it's the 18-core CPU, which is less core count, but it makes up for quite a higher score, as we found out by the score last time. Power supply, again, this one's only got, I think it's only got 64 gigs of RAM in it, because of the type of motherboard that it is, which is a bit of a pain, but as we knew, it didn't really make much difference. Gigabyte AOS GeForce RTX 2080 Extreme, which is the equivalent to this card as best as we can get it. So what I might do is, if this PC is too higher up, because like I said, this has only got, that one's got 32 gigs, 64 gigs of RAM, this has got 32. If it is a massive difference, I'll take half the RAM out and I'll to make it a bit more even, but I want to see just what the raw, the overall benchmark actually is for this, graphics card. Right, so just have a look at the temps. This is actually quite, no, that's because right, that's interesting. I overclocked the CPU, I think. Yeah, we did, because we were faffing about with the last episode, weren't we? Right, let's just go factory reset. Yes. go back into the BIOS, and that should be put back to normal, hopefully. Yep, that's fine. Absolutely fine. Right, back to normal. Well, apply changes, restart. Yes, and then we'll set the benchmark going again. Now, I'm interested in the thermals. Did I actually install any programs on this? Damn. Whoops. No, I didn't. Actually, how did I even benchmark this? I don't know. It's not showing up any storage devices. I don't know. Anyway, never mind. Right. Anyway, USB drive, system info. I'm not sure if I'm going to overclock it. Well, we might do. We'll see. We'll overclock it in a second and see. Well, after we got the results back and see what happens. To see if the overclock actually makes it any different, or how far we can overclock it. Because if I go, I'll show you something while the benchmark's running. Is that, so I'm going to set this going in a minute. Let's open up system info. Right, so that's go. That'll be open. So temperatures. It's getting staying relative. I mean, this is a CPU test in itself, so it's not going to be, the GPU's not going to get too hot. But what I want to show you in a second is that the speeds of this RX card, bearing in mind it is a 8 gigs card, it is more on the equivalent of the 2080 than the 2080 Ti. But if memory serves me correctly, the speed is actually better than the 2080 Ti. So again, I'm really interested to see how well that works and how much of a difference that makes. And if it is triumphing over the 2080, we'll stick a 2080 Ti into it and see if that makes any difference at all. Holding up at 64 degrees Celsius at the moment, which isn't too bad. Let's open up system info and that lot. There we go. And it's blue screen. That's because I tried to overclock the damn thing last episode. Oh dear. Having a faff about the overclocking is not fun. I can't lie. Right. Factory reset. That's what happens when you push CPUs further than they're actually willing to go. You just get a blue screen instantly as soon as you benchmark it. Right, so let's go there. There we go. Nice. Nice. So that's back on point. Actually, I want to cancel that. I want to get system info working. There we go. Run. Nice. And again, CPU, we'll deal with CPU later. I want to just see how's this doing. 64 degrees. 9,052. Okay, so that's respectable. That's not blowing out the park, I can't lie, but it's respectable. It's not massive, but it's a good score, I can't lie. So let's get this into the thing. Now I'm into the GPU test. Now I'm expecting this to be a lot better as far as you can see from the FPS already that the FPS is absolutely just belting the RX card. Now personally, I've always been a fan of NVIDIA, and I wouldn't ever go with the Radeon just because I knew that if I went with Radeon, they wouldn't have that much of a power. It wouldn't be beneficial to me. I would always go with AMD as far as CPUs are concerned, because bang for the buck wise, especially because I'm not going for the highest thread the third they just released, and the one they're releasing next year, which is the 64 core and 128 thread CPU. It's ridiculous stuff, that stuff. But I'm not going for that sort of thing, so I'm not. So as far as that is concerned, if it was the massive stuff, the really big things, then Intel would be a very good competitor if I was making a workstation. But for me, because I'm a gamer, I do basic editing and whatnot, AMD, yeah, it does my job for me. 60 degrees as well as far as the GPU temperature is concerned, which is, again, it's a respectable score. Again, still staying 60 FPS, and it is just slightly higher. Again, so 10,587, and what's this one? 9,052, so it's basically 1,100 score higher. Now, that's actually quite interesting, because if I go to my graphics cards, and I go to the XT card, that's Radeon XT card, the clock speed is much higher. Now, if I go, so we know the core frequency is that much higher than the 2080. Let's have a look at the 2080 Ti, and let's get rid of it. 28. Oops, daisy. Hang on. 2080 Ti. And the highest core clock one, which is this one, the Gigabyte Extreme Edition. Where's the we haven't got the AOS, never mind. But the fact this one, the Extreme Edition, it's even lower than the Radeon card. And that's an 11 gig video card. Now, obviously, because it's got higher video memory, it is going to absolutely smash the Radeon card out of the park, as we've seen. Considering the 2080 did it, the 2080 Ti is definitely going to do it. But what I'm quite interested to see is if I overclock this thing. Now, I'm not sure how far I'm going to be able to overclock it, but we're going to have a go. But if I overclock it, how much more like speed I'm going to be able to get from this card, and see if I can actually beat the 2080 in its base clock. Now, I doubt I'll be able to do it. I highly doubt it. However, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to speed up the video until just while I do this GPU testing, and I'll be back once I've got the maximum speed that I possibly can get. Alright guys, so finished me overclocking tests. Now, what we've basically learned is I've managed to get the core clock and the memory clock over what the 2080 Ti is, and over what the 2080 is. So, we've got a 2012 core clock and an 1804 memory clock. 150% of core voltage because we need to do that stuff. And it seems to be stable. So what I'm going to do, system info, what base temperature are we looking at now on our graphics cards? That's just the core temperatures. Where's the graphics cards? GPU temperature. Okay, so it's 50 degrees on stock. Now, bearing in mind, now the reason why I couldn't overclock it anymore is because it's not liquid cooled. If it was liquid cooled, it'd be able to stay cooler under much more intense loads. So I'd be able to overclock it a bit more. However, it's not a major issue. It's not a major issue to me personally. Because one, it just takes time, and two, I just can't be bothered. You know, and I know that that if this test doesn't beat the 2080 Ti, then this thing is just not capable of meeting up to that expectation as far as the 2080 is concerned, or even 2080 Ti for that matter. But it's a 50 degrees stock, so I'm interested to see what the temperature is going to be when it's under intense load. Now, bear in mind, when I was running the GPU testing, in the overclocking section, in the OCCT, it was pretty much at 92 degrees under heavy load when I was testing it. So, I'm interested to see if it will go that far here, and how if that'll happen here, and if it does, how far up will it go? Because if you have a look at the GPU temperature here, it is it's just sitting just under 50 degrees. So, again, all the other cores are like 88 degrees, because this 31 or 32 core Threadripper is a beast, to say the least. And that's also another interesting point. A lot of people turn around and say, oh, what's bottlenecking? This is basically what bottlenecking is. Bottlenecking is when your CPU, or when one of your components doesn't meet the other components in performance, it drags everything down. 92 degrees. Bloody hell, man. That's it. Well, at least the CPUs is the GPUs working up to GPU territory here, CPU territory here, but never mind. However, but weirdly enough though, the FPS is a bit lower. Never mind. But anyway, so what I was saying was that, like, this here, we've managed to get quite a high score in this with the two NVIDIA cards, and that's because the two NVIDIA cards with this CPU match up quite well, because it's a good CPU, it's a really good CPU, really good 32-core CPU, and the two 2080 Ti's, which are the best on the market, fully functional, and it has not got anywhere near that Radeon card. In all fairness, actually, I think the CPU has actually got a slightly higher score, and the GPU has only got like 10 more points extra. That's actually really quite interesting. So even with an overclock of speed, as far as specs is concerned, the Radeon card is actually better than the 2080. In practice, it's not actually better, which is quite weird, because you would have thought, like, if you looked at specs, you would think, oh, the higher the spec, the better the CPU, the better product it is. Not necessarily, as we've seen with this Radeon card. That's actually very, like, I'm very interested by that, actually. You know, and to think that we could get like a 10587 score here, and the graphics card has just absolutely blown the Radeon card out of the water, considering it's the fact that it's just a 2080 and the core clock is lower. You know, same amount of video memory and everything, it's just the core clock's lower. So I am quite interested in that. What I might do, because as we've seen, it's nowhere excuse me, nowhere on par with the 2080. What I might do now, let me stick a 1080 in there and see if the speed actually makes it a bit more better. So if we go 1080 OC, what's the highest core clock one we've got? It should be an Asus Extreme Edition one here. Here we go. So 1080 8 gigs. So again, higher core frequency, slightly lower memory clock, but this 1080 Extreme Edition is actually lower core clock than the Radeon. So the Radeon has actually got higher core clock, but I want to see, because if it's an older card, it's not going to bench as high as the 1080, obviously. But I want to see, I do want to see how well it clocks as far, like, in comparison, because it is an older GPU. So we'll go, let's go run this test, because the 1080 it's not a bad GPU. It's like what many people consider is like the low end of high end, if that makes sense. So the budget high end, you go for your 1080 Ti if you were like a proper patriot to NVIDIA sort of thing, and go for that full max of power and like speed and like I don't know, FPS sort of thing. But it's not the same with the 2080 Ti's now. But again, GPU, I know we haven't overclocked it, but GPU temperature's staying relatively 60. But again, if we look at the FPS rate, the FPS is like, it's in the realm of the 28 of that RX card, the 50 FPS point. But I'm not sure whether the Intel chipset will actually bring it up a bit. But again, even so, we can see the GPU and the CPU test individually, so we can see what the score is in difference. So obviously the score is probably going to be higher because the CPU is going to be like pushing it up. But in difference, we can see it in comparison and see them individually, so that'll tell us in detail which one's better. But the FPS is saying relatively like under 60 FPS, which is quite. I would say I'm not surprised. I'm quite surprised because it's a 1080 card. But in all fairness, like, I'm not particularly surprised. I thought. Now, I was going to put a 1070 in this because it looked, yeah, see, so not as good as the new card, so it is definitely better than a 1080. I wonder, I'm just testing to see what card it's equivalent to by this point. So, we've established that a 1080 is not on par. Now, a 1080 Ti, I'm not even going to bother because it's not an even test. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a 2070, which is the same spec, but I'm wondering if this is more the road of what AMD were trying to get at. Because my thought process is that it's a brand new card, it's quite high, it's ray tracing and all this jazz, or what they claim is ray tracing. I don't know, I haven't checked it, but they got these new features. It's a brand new card, but is it really up to their point? Because at the moment, the Vega 64 is basically the 1080 Ti as far as graphics cards are concerned, as far as on the Radeon side. But I'm not sure whether this one is actually meant to be the full high-end, like a 2080 card, like, equivalent. Maybe it's a 2070, which is the equivalent, which, looking at the score at the moment, that seems to be more the case. However, it's still below the Radeon, as far as the FPS is concerned. So, is this card between a 2070 and a 2080, maybe? I don't know. Because, like, I don't know, it's quite interesting. We'll see what the score is. So what I'm going to do, go ahead in the video for a bit, and I'll be back once I get the score back. Alright guys, we're back, and looking at the GPU score, it's still not on par with the Radeon card. Like, the Radeon card's above this GPU. So, what were, like, I'm literally scratching my head more because I got an itch, but I'm slightly confused as to, like, where was Radeon going with this? Like, it's a different, like, this is overclocked, but the clock speed didn't really make too much of a difference, as we found in the results. But it's basically between a 2070 and a 2080. It's got a higher score than the 2080. So it's got a higher score than 2070, but a lower score than the 2080. So as far as performance and benchmarking is concerned, it's between those two. So what most companies do, as far as when they're competing with each other, because AMD have done this with Intel, they either try and blow them out the water, or they make an equivalent. So we've got, let's say Intel and AMD, for example. We've got Intel i3, 5, and 7, and you've got the Radeon 3, 5, and 7. You've got the Intel Neon, or the i9, like the XE series and whatnot, and AMD's Threadripper series. So the performance is definitely very much different, but they're either trying to, AMD and Intel, with the i3, 5, and 7, and the Radeon 3, 5, and 7, they're basically going along the same path lines, but they're competing with each other along the same thing. So you have like an i5 that's equivalent to a Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 5. So they're directly linked with each other, because this is where the performance equivalates. But there's no performance equivalation here. They're both exactly the same. You know, and maybe if I went for one with a slightly lower clock, so maybe if I went for like a 2080 that's a slightly lower clock, or a slightly lower clock speed, so like the Founders Edition, maybe I'd get a bit more of a realistic score. But surely ones that are the highest score they can possibly be should still be on the same length, because then I'm basically facing with a 2080 graphics card that's even further apart as far as clock speed is concerned. And again, as we've seen with these tests, as far as clock speed is concerned, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because the clock speed on the Radeon card is still higher, but it still works out as lower than the 2080 graphics card. So I'm quite perplexed as to why that is. You know, and I would put the Radeon card in this one to see how it benchmarks, but the benchmark is still going to be the same because the specs are the same. So I'm quite, like, I'm baffled by that, and why Radeon have gone, like, straight down the middle as far as their graphics cards are that graphics card is concerned, like, between two. Like, what's the point in doing that? Because, like, I can't quite remember what the price, don't know what the price difference is between the 2070 and the 2080. I know I bought my 2070 for about 500 quid. So 500 Great British pounds, if for people who are outside of the UK and don't know what the word quid means. But for 500 pound, I bought, well, it's 550, but along the 500 pound line for on Amazon. And the 2080, I'm pretty sure, is along the lines of, this is in dot, no, that's the 2070, but see, it's $830 US in this game, but never mind. But I think in the 2080 is more like the 750 mark. So, and I'm not sure how much the RX 570 is meant to be. I'm just gonna go ahead in the video just to have a look at my phone just to see how much the price is for each of these cards. Right, so just had a look on Amazon for the UK of how much that card costs. The Radeon card costs 347, so, but I still don't understand, like, yes, that would be a good buy if you're basically trying to go for a very high-end, like, 2080 system for the price of, like, less than a 2070, but I still don't understand where they're going as far as the benchmark is concerned. Because somebody who's like for me, that's very compelling. But that card's got nothing that that would be good for somebody who's working on a budget and wants the 2070, a 2070 style card or slightly better, but doesn't want to fork out like 500, 600, 700 quid for an NVIDIA graphics card. However, from my point of view, who does use tech quite a lot and is very keeps up with tech stuff, I don't see why anybody who is actually looking to put a proper PC together, whether it be working on something or editing or gaming on one, or why somebody would buy that card. Because if you wanted a game properly and you weren't on a really tight budget, that card is not exactly that card isn't the best option. I would personally, maybe it's because I'm an NVIDIA person and I prefer the Intel and NVIDIA, or the AMD and NVIDIA combo. However, I personally just don't see the difference. I do see the difference, but I don't see why somebody would go for a middle of the road thing. And maybe it is a good idea the more I think about it, because somebody who wants something a bit more than a 2070. A 2070, but doesn't want to fork out that much for 2080, but so you get that in the middle of the road performance, but the price is lower. But but again, as we've seen, it doesn't really bench that high, So somebody who's absolutely wanting to get full proper performance, I wouldn't recommend that card. I would recommend a 2080 or even a 2080 Ti. But and I think I can see why people would be fooled by that, because they would look at a 2070 and see it's 550 quid, let's say, and then they would see this Radeon card. It's got a higher boost clock, it's got the same amount of video memory, and it's half the price of a 2070. So you'd be able to see, oh god, that card, it must be so much better because it's got such a high clock speed. But as we've seen with these benchmarks, the difference it makes isn't necessarily worth what you pay for it. So they're playing a really dangerous game here, Radeon. They're basically trying to trick their customers into, this is how I see it anyway, they're trying to trick their customers into thinking, right, if we make it look good with higher clock speeds and the same amount of video memory, make it look good as the AMD, the Intel relative equivalent, but higher clock speed to make it look better, but actually it's a lower benchmark score, so the performance is actually lower, then people will buy it. And from somebody who's doesn't look into it as somebody like me does, then that's a very compelling argument, and it's a very good way of marketing. However, it doesn't work in practice, as we've seen with these benchmarks. Now, again, I'm not saying don't buy that card, because it is a very good card. It benchmarks very well, but in comparison with its Intel counterparts, it doesn't bench as high. And even the 2070 graphics card, it's 8,382, and this one is 9,019. It's 600 points. It's a 600 point score difference. Now that's not a major thing. It's not majorly problematic, and so personally, I know the price is different and it's a lot cheaper to buy the Radeon card, but I would personally prefer the NVIDIA version. And yes, people, I personally wouldn't go for, I only go for RTX because I wanted that type of card and I wanted to future-proof my PC. But RTX is a bit of a weird sort of thing that NVIDIA decided to do, but because of the lack of games that it supports and whatnot else. But yeah, it's weird. I would personally, it's a nice card. It does its job properly and it does the job that it's set to do. But what really baffled me is why they put the clock speed so much higher than the other two cards, than the Intel equivalents, but it still performs lower. It's a higher clock speed it's basically a higher spec on paper than the 2080. So it's still got the same amount of video memory, but it's a higher clock speed of both core and memory clock. So on paper it's faster, but in practice it's not. And why they decided to do that, I don't actually know. You know, it's a weird game that they would be playing, but, you know, I don't know. But anyway, that's about what we have time for in this Let's Play video here. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button for more awesome gaming content. If you have any suggestions for PC Building Simulator, I do have another video that I'm planning on doing, which is basically just going through this like cupboard of all my pieces that I've built, just like trying to remember what they were for. So anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed, and I shall see you all later. Bye.